in the distance, the Mediterranean. But again, if we're in a place that has a nice view, it doesn't take too many days of being there, and we don't even notice the view anymore. My experience was the view kept getting more and more beautiful. And also little insignificant things like tiny little flower after some time was like, wow, that's so amazing, so beautiful. So same thing, is that craving and attachment settling down, I was enjoying these pleasurable experiences much more than I'd ever done before in my life. So if we reduce our craving and attachment, I think you're going to find you'll enjoy your simple pleasures in life much more than you do now. But then there's another doubt. Often people then think, if I get rid of my craving and attachment, how can I have a relationship? It would be impossible. I need attachment for a relationship. Again, exact opposite. Craving and attachment interferes with our relationships. And part of the confusion here is the word attachment. And how that word is defined in Buddhism and in psychology, I think, is not the same. In fact, I've got a couple of definitions that I found here for attachment in psychology. One is that attachment is an enduring emotional tie to a special person, characterized by a tendency to seek and maintain closeness, especially during times of stress. Another definition I found from psychology: attachment is a feeling that binds one to a person, thing, cause, or like. Another definition, a feeling of affection for a person. And some synonyms for the word attachment in psychology: affection, devotion, regard, loyalty, love. So this is very different in how the word attachment is used in Buddhism. So in Buddhism, we are to eliminate attachment 100%, but I think in psychology, in attachment theory, there are healthy forms of attachment we actively need to cultivate. For example, classic example, strong bond between mother and child is seen as attachment, and that's a healthy attachment we need to cultivate. Of course, a strong bond between mother and child, from a Buddhist perspective, is not attachment. In fact, we need to cultivate a strong bond between ourselves and everyone else. So again here, attachment in Buddhism is defined as a mental factor that sees its object as attractive, it exaggerates the object's attractiveness, and then wishes to possess and hold the object. So therefore, in a relationship, actually, attachment is, of course, all about me, 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 me. And attachment sees the other person as a thing, as an object to satisfy me. Whereas love or loving kindness in a relationship, of course, is simply the wish for them to be happy. And the fine print is without expecting anything in return. What we would call unconditional love, no strings attached love. Conditional love or strings attached love is love polluted by attachment. And that sounds like this: I will love you as long as, and here comes the condition, as long as you keep saying and doing things that make me happy. Otherwise, no. So that's all attachment speaking. So to distinguish between love and loving kindness and attachment is, love or loving kindness is saying, I want you to be happy. Attachment is saying, I want you to make me happy. So attachment's all about me, 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 and sees the other person as a thing, as an object to satisfy me. Now, all relationships, of course, are a mixture of loving kindness and attachment. So what we are to do is to distinguish these two dynamics, increase the healthy one, the loving kindness, and decrease the unhealthy one, the attachment, as much as possible, and our relationships will improve. And what we need to realise is that our life is pervaded by attachment, and not to think that by next week I'll get rid of it. That's not going to happen. It will be a lifelong endeavour. But the more that we can reduce our attachment, the more we can increase loving kindness, the better our relationships will be. And here, in this context, sometimes in Buddhism you'll hear things like, according to Buddhism, we are to love everyone equally. And then when we hear that, we get some very strange idea about what that means. Often people feel that means I have to spend the same amount of time with everyone and behave in the same way to everyone. This would be a disaster, particularly if we're talking intimate behaviour. So when we talk about, remember, love is not a behaviour. So when Buddhism says to love everyone equally, what we're really saying, of course, is to equally wish everyone to be happy. That we can aspire to. How we would express that loving kindness to our partner would translate into probably spending a lot of time with them and maybe intimate behaviour. We would express that same loving kindness to our family members and friends in a very different way and maybe spend less time with them. We would express that same loving kindness to our neighbours and work colleagues in a very different way and maybe spend no time with them. So again, it's all about equally wishing everyone to be happy. But then there's still one more doubt that often comes up, and that is, often people say, okay, I can sort of understand those points about relationships and enjoying pleasures, but I'm a creative person. I need craving and attachment to be creative. Again, the exact opposite. Craving and attachment interferes with creativity. Mental afflictions, so of course mental afflictions such as craving, attachment, jealousy, anger provide a lot of fuel for creativity in terms of subject matter, for songs and art and so forth. But here we're talking about the source of creativity, not the subject matter. The source of creativity comes from deep within our own mind, and if we have a lot of mental afflictions like craving, attachment, jealousy, anger, we are suffocating that creativity. So if we reduce and eliminate them, we allow a space for that creativity to come through. So if we reduce our mental afflictions, we'll become more creative. And now often we tend to be creative for quite selfish motivation in terms of, look at me, how wonderful a musician or artist I am. Aren't I good? Whereas I think the truly great creative people on this planet are the ones who use their creative talents to inspire others for a good purpose. So if we reduce our mental afflictions, not only will we become more creative, we'll become more creative for a more meaningful reason. So therefore, if we work on reducing our craving and attachment, we'll enjoy simple pleasures in life more, our relationships will improve, we'll become more creative for a more meaningful reason. So it's a win-win situation. Okay, we've got a little bit of time left in the session. Is there any questions about loving kindness or attachment?
I think it's probably a question that I asked tons of times and that you heard tons of times, but about attachment in relationships. For me there is a big confusion. I don't understand how to incorporate what you said with the fact that I realize that I have needs in a relationship and that my partner or my friends, they meet my needs. So, and that is part of the reason that I'm with them. And it's not the ultimate reason, it's not the only reason, but it's part of the reason. And I don't want to disrespect my needs inside the relationship.
Yeah, sure.
And that creates attachment.
Needs does not equal attachment, but because our life is our mind is pervaded by attachment, then that easily translates into attachment. So we shouldn't think that getting rid of attachment is getting rid of needs. No. But actually, if we look at those needs, often the way to what's the word I'm looking for? The way to satisfy those needs is often actually coming from within. And what we tend to do is we externalize. You know, like, for example, I feel lonely, and therefore I need people to to overcome that. But it's actually that very need that makes you feel lonely. So if you turn it in the other way, you look inside, it's actually this sort of me attitude that makes us feel lonely. And so we feel like, oh, I need those people to help me overcome my loneliness. But actually that's like drinking salty water. You'll never quench your thirst. No matter how many people around you, with this me attitude, you're going to feel lonely. I mean, for example, some of the loneliest people on the planet are the ones who live in the big cities, surrounded by thousands of people. So, therefore, yes, we have needs, but a lot of those needs can be satisfied internally. And if we look external, then we're just making those needs, we won't satisfy them, we'll just end up with craving and attachment through externalizing. Yes, can that partner do some physical activities for me to help me in a certain way? Yeah, absolutely. But in terms of having a need that person makes me feel happy or helps me overcome my loneliness, then we're on a slippery slide down attachment, the way of attachment. So if we can reduce that attachment, those needs can be met in a much more healthy way. And then we can help that other person in a much more healthy way. So I think we need to appreciate that. Otherwise, I think a lot of confusion in that area.
Can I ask another?
Sure.
I see what you're saying, but I have a belief based on my life and based on what I learned also, that there is a human need for connection. And
Correct.
there are needs that can only be met through connection.
Correct. And if we have a healthy attitude towards that, we can meet them. And the healthy attitude is not about what I can get from the person, but it's what I can bring to the person. And if you can bring to the person, that need will be satisfied. That need for connection. The need for connection is through you giving, not trying to get. Trying to get will smash that connection and you're going to feel lonely, no matter how much you try and get. And that relationship will suffer immensely because it's all about me. If you can bring to something to that person, that connection will grow and be very healthy and strong, and your need will be met through bringing, not getting. So that's the shift.
There are some people who can't give to the others. For example, people who need food, people who don't have houses, people who are in war situation.
Right, but
so
remember...
they need something from outside.
Sure.
They are not in situations that can provide something to the environment.
Correct, but remember, giving has many levels, and the very basic is material. But at a deeper level, giving time, giving love. These are much more giving advice and guidance. These are much more deeper levels of giving than do I have money or something to give to that person or some material things. Of course, that's helpful, but much deeper level of giving than just material things. So you'll find that in this perfection of generosity, these different levels of giving. And what we always need to, and then we'll take a break, what we also need to remember is with these sorts of things like giving and compassion and loving kindness, we always need to bring wisdom along. Otherwise, it usually ends up not very good. We get taken advantage of, we do things that don't help, all these sorts of things. So we need to make sure we have wisdom with everything we do when we interact with others in terms of giving or loving kindness and compassion. Otherwise, it doesn't work very well. So that's important. Maybe if there's one last quick question and then we'll take a break.
Like, what is the antidote for attachment?
Okay. The antidote, and we can talk about a number of antidotes to attachment. Of course, the first thing is to understand what attachment is and that it's harmful, as we looked at it here. If we don't understand that, of course, we're going to keep doing it because we think it's good for us. So the first step is understanding what is attachment and understanding that it only gives suffering. If we don't understand that, of course, we're going to continue to indulge in attachment because we think it's going to bring us something. So that's the first step. The second step is, if we want to apply an antidote, we need mindfulness. Because what will happen? Some stimulus will come, attachment will start, and before we know it, we've already reacted in a not a good way. So the trick is, to apply an antidote to attachment, is we need to catch it before it takes control of our mind. Because if attachment's taking control of our mind, we're out of control. About the only thing we can do then is get out of that situation before we say and do things we're going to regret. But the key is to catch it before our mind is out of control. For that, we need mindfulness. So we have a little window of opportunity from when stimulus to reaction. It may be only a couple of seconds. But if we don't have mindfulness, we're going to react, and then it's really too late. And that's what the Shamatha practice will give us. Shamatha will strengthen our mindfulness so that when we come into some situation and there's some pleasant stimulus and we start to have some attachment coming up, we'll go, oh, okay, and we'll see it. Then we're still in control. Then we can apply an antidote because we're still in control. One thing we can do, simple thing, is just watch it. Just look at it. Oh, there's attachment coming. Oh, interesting. And if we look at it, we're not feeding it, which means it can't go anywhere. It'll just go psh. So a very simple thing, and that's one of the advantages with the Shamatha practice, observing the mind, that we're going to do in a couple of days, is exactly this, is that we'll be able to observe things like not just attachment, but jealousy, anger, irritation. We'll be able to observe those things as they're arising. We'll go, oh, that's interesting. And when we look, if we can look at it, it'll go, gone. Then we don't need to apply an antidote. But then, on top of that, it's good to have some antidotes in case we need them. And with attachment, particularly to pleasant things, the antidote that's normally mentioned in the text is impermanence. Impermanence, of course, here means things changing moment by moment. Now, of course, we all intellectually accept that, because science has proven it, we learnt it at school, that everything we see is changing moment by moment. However, that's not how we instinctively relate to things, that they're changing moment by moment. We instinctively see people and things as actually quite stable and not really changing. And if that's pleasant, we react with attachment. But if we can, and this impermanence is of course one type of Vipassana practice that we'll talk a bit about on day, I think, 8 actually. If we can bring that intellectual understanding of impermanence into experience through meditation, and we can start to experientially see things as changing moment by moment, and then when we encounter someone or something pleasant, what's there for attachment to grab hold of? There's nothing to grab, because it's just changing. So this is a very effective antidote to attachment, impermanence, but not just intellectual. I have to bring it inside, Vipassana practice. The other one, and then we'll take a break, is as we mentioned here, in a relationship, we have two dynamics: loving kindness, attachment. Loving kindness is about that person. Attachment's all about me. So what is very helpful in that sort of situation where attachment is normally coming up is shift perspective. Because as long as with our partner or other things we have a perspective of me, what am I getting out of this? Attachment will follow. will follow. So if in that relationship we can shift from first person perspective to second person perspective, see the situation from their perspective, how are they seeing the situation, then much more likely that we will have loving kindness coming up rather than attachment. Because attachment's all about me, loving kindness is about that person. So that's a thing we can do in relationships is shift that perspective of not how do I see this situation, what am I getting out of it, but how is that person seeing it. So that is helpful in a relationship. Okay? So let's take a break. And 3:45 we have the yoga session, and I think you've mentioned where it is and everything. Okay. So then there's 1 hour yoga session till 4:45, and then a sort of 15-minute break, and then 5 o'clock we'll go back here and we'll come back into the Shamatha practice. And then opportunity to ask some questions about the Shamatha practice that we're doing today. So let's take a break.